how crucible moments can make or break us, how being curious leads to a legendary life, and why drinking with Dr. James Kelley and Jon Berghoff is so much fun. All right. Joey Ramone said, hey ho, let's go. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Hello, my legendary friends. This is Christopher Lochhead. And man, am I ever glad that you are joining us for this outstanding, this fun, this magical mystery tour where we chase a lot of rabbits down zebra holes with none other than Dr. James Kelley and returning guest, my dear friend, the legendary Jon Berghoff. Now, if you're new to Legends and Losers, welcome. And I hope somebody warned you. If you're a longtime listener, stoked to have you with us. We have been described as like going to business school in a dive bar. Brian Shaheen says that Legends and Losers is so off, it's on. And Jeffrey Ross, in his wonderful new Amazon review, thank you so much, Jeffrey. He did a review of my book, Play Bigger. At the end of the review, he said that Legends and Losers is, quote, the best business podcast going. So here on Legends and Losers, we aspire to have authentic dialogues about what it really takes to live a legendary life and a legendary business. And we've got two spectacular guests today. Dr. James Kelley, who is a PhD in marketing. And I met Dr. James because I was actually on his podcast. And he's got a great podcast called Executives After Hours, which I've actually gotten pretty addicted to because it's very Legends and Losers-esque, and you'll see why when you spend some time with Dr. James Kelley. And the other thing that's really fun was, Dr. James lives in Dubai, and he happened to be on the West Coast to do some stuff, and he said, why don't I come down to Santa Cruz and we can do this live and in person, which is exactly what we did. And, the vast majority of Legends and Losers are shot over the interweb with somebody, somewhere else in the world or the country or wherever. And, I don't know, maybe about 10% of our shows or so, for one reason or another, the guest has either been local or it's been convenient for them or whatever it is. And so they come in, and there's always a little special dynamic. The other thing that was special about this was it turned out that Jon Berghoff, the founder of Flourishing Leadership Institute, one of the best kind of corporate meeting guru, event guru guys you can imagine. He's been on the show, and he was in town, and he had his kids in town, and he was visiting his family. He grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, lives in the Cleveland area, Ohio today. And so he was here on the same day. And so we ended up having both of them together at the same time. The other thing I need to tell you is not only were the three of us present, but so was a fair amount of alcohol. And we were drinking beers, and we were drinking this whiskey from Santa Cruz called Wayward Whiskey. I am in no way paid to promote this brand, although maybe I should be. And we get into it. As a result, it went incredibly long, way longer than the average Legends and Losers. And so if you're a regular listener, you know we do very little editing of the show. Given how long this went, we decided that we would put it on a bit of a diet. So we actually did some editing of the show, which is a little bit unusual. But believe me when I say we capture the absolute essence of the dialogue that we had and the authenticity of the dialogue that we had. And I think you're going to enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Now, Jon Berghoff, he was on episode 33. If you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to do so. He's the founder of the Flourishing Leadership Institute in the Cleveland area. He is amazing at leading these executive events. He's incredible about creating these experiences that open up executive teams to new ways of thinking and ultimately driving big strategic change. He's also dear friends with our friend Hal Elrod. And as you may know, Hal has been dealing with cancer. He's on the positive side of it right now. And so for the last, I don't even know how many months, Jon has been hosting Hal's podcast, Achieve Your Goals. And the Achieve Your Goals show is one of the top podcasts in the world. Now, Dr. James He's got an eclectic background. As I mentioned, he's a PhD in international marketing. So he's kind of the other side of it. I didn't go to school, and he really did. He got his PhD from the University of Western Australia. And he's a guy that's lived in many cool places around the world. Obviously, he grew up in the United States, but he's lived in Australia. He's lived in Japan. And now, of course, he lives in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. He calls himself an edupreneur, and defined as an educator or somebody who's an academic who's also an entrepreneur. He runs his own consultancy called Brave Endurance. He's married, and he's got 4 kids. And he's got a brand new book out that is incredibly worth picking up. It's called Crucible's Gift: 5 Lessons from Authentic Leaders Who Thrive in one day I'm going to learn to talk. Note to self, if you want to do a podcast, you should learn to talk. So his book is called The Crucible's Gift: 5 Lessons from Authentic Leaders Who Thrive in Adversity. And so, he, like me, is fascinated by how losing can contribute to winning, and how, when bad things happen in our lives, we're all faced with a moment of truth. And, if you're a regular listener, you'll know that I am somebody who is forever fascinated by what happens in life when we are presented with one of those moments of truth that can either make us or break us. And it turns out that Dr. Kelley is as well. So strap yourself in. Here's Jon Berghoff and Dr. James Kelley on Legends and Losers.
So actually, I have a question for Jon.
Yes.
So you're an evolved human being, right? Like in a good way.
By some definition.
Yeah. We all have our own definitions of that. You didn't begin that way, right?
Yeah.
So like, what was like the major transformation that you had in your life that made you, because you and I off mic talked earlier about sharing our parents' story. And I think my mom's like ultra negative with a big heart.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an oxymoron, but you said, similar, which typically as human beings, we reflect our parents because that was the environment we were raised in.
Yeah.
So what was this moment for you that kind of, because you're super positive, like I saw with your kids, you're amazing, like super generous and kind and
thanks,
patient.
man.
Like it was awesome.
Thanks.
And I mean that as a dad with 4. Like I was inspired by you, and I don't think I'm a shithead dad. I think I'm a pretty good dad, but like you were amazing. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. What was it in your life? What was that moment that was like switch for you?
Yeah. Well, I had a great dad, which I feel like whatever I do instinctively as a parent, it's just a reflection, I think, of my dad. I think I was lucky there. I've talked to Christopher about this, that he talks about how you had with Bix a way out when you learned you could be who you were and keep moving forward. I had kind of a way out in high school. I wasn't doing well and stumbled into selling Cutco kitchen knives. And that was a big turning point, because I walk into this office and they got this big sign above the whiteboard that says, life doesn't respond to need or want, it responds to deserve. And then I meet the manager. You've got to deserve whatever you want in life. It doesn't matter if you need it.
What does that mean, deserve? I don't get that.
It means if I want rewards in life, I have to deserve them. I can't just need them or want them. I have to create a value in the world. I have to do something so that I
I'm really
deserve
struggling
a
with that
reward.
word deserve. I don't get. Again, I feel like I'm not an unintelligent person. I don't get that deserve. Like,
yeah, I think the spirit of that quote, at least whatever it meant to me at 17, was I thought, okay, what they're talking about here, if I go out and learn how to sell these knives, this is a reflection of what the real world is like. The world responds to me creating a value. And so that, you asked about a turning point. That was a turning point, because that company I worked for, they have an incredible culture. They did and still do today. The company that markets Cutco, and where everything they do is about personal growth. It's about helping young people to develop. And the knives are just a vehicle through which they're doing that. That was a big turning point. A lot of positive influences there.
So sorry, the word deserve, I'm stuck on this word deserve. I think it's a really, really critical word, right? So like deserve means like, it's a way of training you to think like, I belong. Is that another way to think of it?
Maybe, and that would work really well with an 18-year-old young man. Yeah. If you think about Cutco thrives on creating an environment where young people can feel a sense of significance and meaning and importance. If you think about that time in our lives, 17, 18, 19 years old, that's an emotional need, I think, that if a young person can meet that need in a productive, positive way, that's an addictive drug.
I had students who did Cutco in the summer.
Yeah.
And I had one who wanted to quit college and do it full on. Like she was sold on it.
Yeah, that was me. That was me. Yeah. I didn't get accepted in any of the colleges I applied to, and they didn't. So I thought I'm just going to keep selling knives. So I did that for 4 or 5 years.
Do either of you guys regret not going to university? From an experiential standpoint? I don't know if regret's the right word. But
I don't regret the path that I took and the way it ended up happening, because it wasn't right for me.
Your life has worked out amazing.
For you.
I don't regret it because
both your guys' lives have turned out massively awesome.
No, but it wasn't an option for me. So it's not like, oh, yes, I made a choice. You could go to college or you could do this other thing. They threw me out, right? They said, go fuck yourself. And so when that happens, in my case, at what in the United States would have been still high school, it wasn't an option. Like flying to space wasn't an option. So it
didn't register with you.
No.
Yeah.
And this will sound terrible, but I never thought I would travel. I never thought I'd go anywhere. And so the idea of, I remember, friends wanting to go to New York and stuff when I was a teenager, and going to New York would be like going to space. So I never thought I was going to travel. And I kind of knew I was never going to make it to college. Like it just wasn't, math started to get hard in grade 4. So
that was your dyslexia though.
Well, yeah, but I didn't know that until I was 21. So I got thrown out at 18. It was only at 21 I figured it out. And like only recently I've realized that I have this thing called executive function disorder that I didn't know that I had.
That's why the microphone keeps.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking microphone. And according to Cameron Harold, I'm fucking bipolar, and I think he's probably right. And I figured that out, in the last month or two.
Yeah. I always find that, because like probably similar to you guys. I mean, my parents literally, I had this conversation with my mom literally last night. My mom and I had a really heart-to-heart. I see her like only every 1.5 years. She's this hard upper lip Scottish woman, right? So emotions aren't part of it. And if she does emotion, I'll go straight to tears. Like there's no like collect $200. It's I'm happy, tears. That's it. Like that's the only 2 choices. And we're having this conversation is like, your expectations for me was to try. There was no like, you're going to college. You're going to do this. It was give it a go. That was it. And give it a go. I'll be on my knees with my hands crossed, praying to God that you actually show up to college. When I graduated high school, I had a 2.5. I think my SAT, what is it, out of 800? I think I got like 4 something, 5 something, maybe max. Like max. I only got in because I played sports. Like it's the only reason why I got in. I played Division I sports. That was it. And I was on probation when I got in.
What sport?
It was water polo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
water polo.
Sport.
Yeah.
Athletes are real athletes. That's a tough.
They're men.
Fucking,
They're men.
Yeah. I mean, you might go, oh, it looks like fairy dancing in the water. No. Like
I don't know anyone who thinks it's fairy dancing in the water.
I don't know. Well, I will say one thing. Listen, no disrespect, because you guys are incredible athletes. It's fucking mental to watch that. It's not a spectator sport,
no,
right?
Not at all. Yeah.
I mean, you guys all have this incredible bodies, and you swim like Navy SEALs, and trumpets play when you walk in the room and all that shit. But as a spectator sport, it's kind of like rivals golf.
Can I reflect on that? Hold on. Let me think about the trumpets. Yes. There was trumpets.
Yes, and women's spontaneously collapsing of excitement.
Yes. I've
never watched water polo. Yeah.
Usually it's only Olympics.
Really?
Watch it. Yeah.
Okay. I remember friends who played it in high school, but
of course in California, like it's a must. Like everyone knows it.
Yeah.
But that's the only way I got into college. So like I can completely relate to you guys in terms of I never really thought it was an option. Like it wasn't. I just kind of applied. My parents had no part of the application process. And so I always wonder though, for those who chose, and I always have to preference, because I feel like I'm an arrogant motherfucker when I say this, like not everyone's meant to go to college. Like it's not everyone's journey or destination, which is totally fine. I think that is a false, what are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing at something John has said in the past that I don't know why it makes me pee myself, but it's like John says, well, I have always chosen the path of self-education.
Yeah.
I don't know why you think that's so funny.
Yeah, right?
Because so sometimes my external monologue goes, my internal monologue goes external, and clearly this is one of those times like, well, I've always chosen the path of self-pleasuring. I was like, yeah, well, when no one else will teach you, you have to teach yourself. That's what happens, John.
So I think my point was not self-masturbation. That was not my point. Not at all. My point is that I think in our society we sell a bill of goods. If you get a college education, that X is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that everyone should go to college because it is. When I lived in Australia, the most fascinating thing happened to me mentally. Is I think in the U.S. we start to segregate people by education, by zip code, by job. I think if you live in New York, one of the first questions you ask is, where do you live? Oh, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, Brooklyn. Oh, okay. And you make an equivalence of like, what do they do? So the second question is like, okay, first question is, where do you live? What do you do? And that can be anywhere in the U.S., right? And we do that to categorize who that person is in society and what their education is. So I guess for either one of you two, people ask all the time, where'd you go to university? Because you're both really successful. So the automatic implication of success is that you went to university, which is completely false.
So you want to know something about that?
Yeah.
Nobody ever asks me where I went to school. Ever.
Did they ever ask you, John?
I can't remember the last time I was asked.
Because you're further in your career now. But early on, did it happen?
On occasion, but I guess I stayed on a path where it stayed irrelevant.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like when you get to meet someone, like what are the questions people ask you when you first meet you? They don't know you. What do they ask?
Yeah, where I'm from, who I am, what I do.
And never when you went to college comes up?
No, as a matter of fact, I started.
So I'm a stereotyping motherfucker.
Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah.
You're an asshole.
Oh.
It's like Vic's living at 4.
Yeah.
And that's why your life doesn't work, and you're an asshole.
I'm going to start drinking.
Oh!
The chair is empty.
I think you need some more wayward whiskey. Yeah, I mean, no, it just doesn't happen.
I mean, I can see now.
No, but like at 28, it didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah, in the town that was in a lot of ways created by Stanford, nobody asked. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-mm.
I've never had that. Like, people usually ask me, not now, but when I was younger.
Yeah.
Now it's different. Like you're removed from that part of your life. But
Yeah.
when I was younger, that was one of the first questions that always came up.
Yeah.
It was like, what do you do? Where'd you go to college? Always.
I think maybe for me, the only reason that's true is the career path I took. I don't know. I don't know why that is. It's a combination of whoever was part of my social network, what they talked about, what they cared about, what I was doing. I don't know. For some reason, I don't remember getting that a lot.
I feel like I don't need that, by the way. I feel like that I don't need that. But you're an asshole. So I think what's to me. So let's take that aside. What I learned in Australia, which was really, really interesting, is that, I was in Perth, and it's a very active society, like a very active population. So bike riding is really popular. It's really grown in the U.S., but when I was there 10 years ago, you go on a bike ride, and again, I'm really surprised you guys never saw this, but when I go on a bike ride, you'd be on a bike ride with a bricklayer, a plumber, a neurosurgeon, a CEO, and nobody cared their socioeconomic group. It was about who they were. And for me, that was the first time I ever saw, it wasn't about the title that you had or the degree you had. It was about the person you were. And that was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like we lack that in the States because we definitely segregate by education, zip code.
One of the things I love about living in Santa Cruz is we can go to a party in Santa Cruz and nobody ever asks you what you do.
Yeah.
They say stuff like, what have you been up to? You've been out in the water. You've been doing anything cool.
That's awesome.
You've been to the new, fucking, I don't know what, yoga, Pilates, fucking bar, I don't know, cross yoga, I don't know what thing or what,
Yeah.
or you have tickets to see the new, whoever's
But
coming.
it's never about the status of who you are and what you do.
I mean, sometimes, but not normally.
But it's not one of the first 3 questions.
No.
Yeah.
Because Santa Cruz is a work to live place, not a live to work place. Everybody here has made a decision about their life. It's not, well, maybe nobody, I don't know. Most people that we know here are not here for purely economic reasons. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, I grew up in Cupertino here.
Yeah.
And I have my kindergarten picture still, and I'm a minority in that picture. It's
really?
All Chinese kids, yeah. What was interesting is growing up right here, being a minority. I remember as a kid, it wasn't until I was in maybe 5th or 6th grade that I actually even thought of a Chinese person as different than me. Because we assimilated, like our families were friends with their families.
What a powerful experience.
Yeah, and then I moved to DC, where nobody says hi to anybody, at least in the area I was in. And so that was really interesting. And then now in the Midwest, and in DC, people are going to ask, what do you do for work? Where did you go to school? And in the Midwest, they're going to talk about football scores.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about family and schools and community.
Yeah.
And those are the things they're asking about.
It's funny. This is I could argue 3rd, but yeah, it really is my 3rd, but really maybe 2nd fully legit attempt at retirement. And this time I'm going to do it. But
it's like that rash that you took penicillin.
Yeah, exactly. But the first time around, it was after we sold Mercury to HP. And and one of the things that happened was, there were a lot of executives at the company that got jobs at HP. They didn't offer me a job because, Tom Hogan, the head of HP Software at the time, called me and said, "Hey, Chris, I want you to know 2 things. A, thank you for doing everything you're doing on the integration. And B, there's not a chance in hell you're going to work here. So we know that, and we're going to give you your going away Scooby snacks." So after all that happened, and I was retired, the answer to the question, what do you do, had a wide range of answers from me that were true. So one of them was, I retired and moved to Tahoe, and that elicits a certain context. The other one goes, I got fired from HP, and that elicits a whole other context.
So, I mean, I feel like this whole education, I think, is really interesting because you guys never experienced that, but I experienced that all the time. Like one of the first 3 questions is always like job, education. Not now, but in my early 20s. So now, like in your life, like for you're in a different path than John, for example, right? So John is like 12, though he looks like he's 35. I feel like that's a fair assumption.
It's fair.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Chris is 75 and looks like he's 50. So.
You could be 20 with that too.
Yeah, I mean, earlier we talked about how we.
Thank you, honey. I love you too. You
we talked about how we're twins from afar apart. Like we could be twins with the bald head. But do you guys feel like where you're at in your life, like you're on your journey now, and your journey is a different direction? Are you happy with the journey you're on, or do you want to change something about the journey you're on?
Yeah, or both. For me, it would be both. It wouldn't be either or. Yeah.
So what would you change?
Yeah, who I am, how I show up.
But who you are is an amazing person, right?
I love who I am.
I mean, I've known you for only 2 hours.
Yeah, I love who I am.
Guy.
But I got, you know this as a dad with 3 little kids and a family. There's just always something I see back that I think, I would improve how I show up in different ways. Yeah. But professionally, I feel like that's on its own magical mystery tour, and I've led by my values and see what happens.
What are your values?
Yeah, curiosity.
Yeah,
curiosity.
You're totally curious. I love that.
Yeah, curiosity.
I'm not curious at all. No, I'm just kidding. I figured you guys pick up on that sarcasm a little bit, but apparently I didn't sell that hard enough. So
I value nature. I love nature. And I feel like I'm also still just trying to learn about why I value nature, but I love it. Like I can't stand here and not just get totally absorbed by just one of the most magnificent views. This is like a feast for the eyes right here.
Yeah.
Just 3 feet from our microphone.
That's amazing. Those are great choices of words.
Yeah. So I love nature. I spend a lot of time in nature.
So as a dad, like, what's the number one thing you get out of being a dad? I'm a really bad guest on a podcast, by the way.
One thing I get out of being a
ask
dad.
way more questions.
They're a really
guest on this show.
They're a good mirror, a good reflection of who I am at any given moment or who I've been. You know, they're like this real life barometer that says, "Here's who you really are," and that's an awakening for me. And they teach me new ways of loving. Right, like you met my daughter earlier.
Yeah,
she's just full of love. You just see it in her eyes. You know, Ace has this like kind of playful focus and determination. So they each teach me something really deep.
It's interesting. You just said they teach me new ways of loving. We a while ago had this guy named Tony Chan on Legends and Losers, and he's written a couple of best-selling books. His most recent one is called Good People, and I was introduced to him by my buddy and the legendary co-author of Play Bigger, Kevin Maney, and I sort of looked it up, and he'd written this book about, like, you know, human beings in the workforce and this, you know, good people. And I think, if I remember the subtitle of the book, it's The Only Decision That Matters. And I thought, is this going to be a bunch of airy-fairy bullshit? And like, is it just, fuck, Kev? And then I thought to myself, is Kevin Maney retarded? Not a chance. So Tony's going to be awesome. Anyway, he was so beyond awesome. It was incredible. I mean, I've already listened to the show twice. And one of the things that he says is, in our culture, we hire for qualifications, for skills, not character.
Yeah. That was a huge thing, though. Like with Enron, they hired for best in class, right? So when Enron buckled, they were on a mission to hire all Ivy League. And inevitably, all Ivy League is about success, achievements, not culture, right? And then you look at I don't really have an example off the top of my head, but another example, you know, typically they hire for culture first, and those organizations succeed. You know, you can use Apple as an example, or Google.
I'll give you one that I love of late, and I have no particular, I have no relationship with the company economically, and that's Zoom Communications. We had the CEO and founder of Zoom on, Eric Yuan, and they're funded by the guys at Sequoia, who we know well. And they're one of the fastest growing technology companies in Silicon Valley right now. And Eric's whole thing is happiness. And he says, look, it's really simple. Happy engineers write happy software. Happy salespeople sell happy, and they make customers happy. Yeah. Happy customer service people make customers happy. Make everybody fucking happy, and you'll have a business. And
you have a better bottom line.
Yeah. And so you start to hear that, and you go, is this guy for real? And the experience I had talking to Eric was, you know, if this guy ran like the lawn mowing business, he was the category king in Santa Cruz of lawn mowing, you'd be like, oh, this is awesome. This guy's awesome. And this is awesome. But then you go, he's the founder of $1 billion startup that's crushing it. And this topic of what's the role of a company beyond profits, to get back to what Tony said, he talks about purpose over profits, and purpose over product and profits. It's a very powerful idea, and it sounds very left coasty, but you know, Tony's in Boston. He's an incredibly successful entrepreneur, and you hear, a venture capitalist and an entrepreneur. And so this whole notion of we have to be authentic and we have to be ourselves in the work world, and that there's no difference between who we are at home and who we are at work. This idea seems to start to be percolating now.
So, I mean, Boy, that's such a great segue for my book, by the way. That was intentional, but like that's exactly what my book is about, right? And I would tell you,
I know. I took a peek.
Yeah, right. Good work. Good work.
What's it called again? The audacity to be awesome.
I thought it was called Wayward Whiskey, but maybe
Oh,
not.
yeah. I think we might need to rename it. The wayward obstacle.
I was going to say, though, like in my previous life, I had a small consultancy that was focused on corporate health and wellness. And, this idea of happiness is such an important construct. We all define happiness totally different, right? Whatever we each want. But the overwhelming consistency is it's a choice, right? So, on my podcast, I ask every guest, how do you define happiness? And the overwhelming, consistent choice of those who are truly happy is that it's about a choice that you make. It's not about even my family or my job or my experiences. It's choice. Because if you choose to be happy, everything else falls into line. And happiness is different than joy. We don't conflate the two of those two. Joy is a momentary experience that you have in your life. I drove the car fast and it was fun. That was joy. I surfed the epic wave. That's joy. That's not happiness. And there's a difference. And so
no, that's stoke. It's different.
Sorry. West Coast speak is stoke.
It's indigenous
globally.
for joy.
It's
indigenous for joy.
Yes.
It's indigenous for joy that lasts for a while.
Yes. Similar to an erection, however different at the same time.
Well, thankfully, some of us still have erections that last for a while.
None of us are teenagers, so maybe not. All right.
In the event of a 4-hour erection, call somebody you like. I always worry about that. In the event of a 4-hour action, call your doctor. Well, this is terrible. My doctor is a beautiful blonde woman. Now, I'm a happily married man, and so I'm not going to call my doctor in the event of a 4-hour erection. I'm going to call my wife.
So many comments. I was going to leave them alone. Put them on the shelf. Done. I forgot what I was talking about. I thought
happiness.
Yeah, I had a really good point. I had a great point until we got to erection. The point just went north. Please, that was a subtle joke. No one got it?
Yeah, pointed north. I got it.
All right.
And hey, I'm from the great white north.
I think that was a great Strange Brew. That was good. That's Strange Brew, right?
The horrible noise I just made was absolute strange brew. I wonder how many people in the world remember Bob and Doug McKenzie. Oh God, as a Canadian, just the greatest of all time. Yeah.
I remember watching that.
Yeah.
So I've lost my point altogether.
Everything you need to know about life you can discover in Strange Brew with Bob and Doug McKenzie.
What's your favorite movie? John, you can chime in for yours while you pause.
So
I struggle.
It really has to be The Big Lebowski. Yeah.
What about that is like your favorite movie?
The philosophical wisdom of the dude is beyond reproach. Yeah, I mean, there are other movies I love The Usual Suspects. That's a fun movie. I love North by Northwest. I love those. I love all those Hitchcock movies. I love Rope, which is, of course, originally a play. The Hitchcock stuff is they used to call it a pot boiler. It just gets a little bit hotter, and you're just like, oh fuck, what's gonna happen? Just that master of suspense. But yeah, The Big Lebowski. I often tell kids, hey, listen, if you watch The Big Lebowski, Spinal Tap, and Pulp Fiction, you don't need to go to school. And there's some records you need to listen to as well, just to clear it. But you throw in the right records, Pink Floyd, there's a couple records you need to listen to, and you need to listen to a couple of Ramones records. And
I bet their high school counselors are like, are you fucking kidding me?
Beat on the Brat with a baseball bat. Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah, but those ones are big ones for sure.
Do you have a favorite movie, John?
Yeah, I think of
It's a tough question,
Tommy
obviously.
Boy in Office Space, and not because of the
Trains, planes, and automobiles.
Yeah,
You're a comedy guy.
airplanes.
You're a comedy guy.
Of course, Glenn Ross.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's the deep meaning from those movies. I think it's more actually the times in my life where I was watching those repeatedly.
Yeah.
It's a positive anchor for me.
Yeah. I think mine is either of you guys seen High Fidelity?
I don't think I have.
So not only have I seen it, I read the fucking book.
I've done
Hey, where's your bucket? I need to take a leak.
Wait, did
Hey,
you
know what you
do
should
that,
do?
by the way, when you were on this podcast?
Well, do you want to tell that story?
Well, we could definitely tell that story.
Tell me that story.
We could reenact it.
So you can just pee in the outdoor shower if you don't want to go all the way to the man can.
So High Fidelity is
I loved High
by
Fidelity.
far my favorite. Most
And of course you read the book.
Yes, I did both. Nick Hornby was my favorite author. He lost it the last couple books, but
Did he? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't. I haven't tracked him that
No.
closely.
but that was by far my favorite movie. And I think it was my favorite because of the fact that it was where I was at in my life. And John Cusack just does an absolutely amazing job painting the picture of a tortured soul trying to sort out his life.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I related to that. And this may sound like a crazy segue, but why stop now? That movie, for some reason, is connected. So the sort of idiot genius version of that movie for me, and it's somehow connected, is Clerks.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
Clerks.
Do you remember Clerks?
Yeah.
Because
Silent
it-
Bob and
what's the other guy's
what was the
name?
main character?
The guy working in
It was
the...
black and white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me, Jesus Christ. It reminded me because it's sort of these young men in this angstful part of life, and they're sort of losers, and they might have a shot at being legendary, but they're probably going to be losers, and something very humorous about it. Of course, High Fidelity is the much more erudite version, no question.
So, like, you've never seen High Fidelity, it sounds like.
No.
Right, John? Okay, so High Fidelity is about a guy, probably in his, I would say, early 30s, who has always struggled with women. Like, meaning he gets bored. Essentially, it's the case of the grass is always greener. And if you're a guy who I didn't get married to my early 30s, but I thought that I was never going to get married. Like, in my mind, because you got married pretty young, right?
Yeah, I think I was 27, 28.
Oh, you weren't that young. Okay. I was going to go like 21, 22.
I got married at 21.
You got divorced.
What do you mean, but?
Sorry.
I still got married at 21.
And you got divorced.
38.
You got divorced 38. That's a good run.
Yeah, we had a great run.
Yeah.
And, one of the interesting things, people say, oh, it's so sad your marriage failed.
Do they sound like that when they do it?
Yeah, and then they get punched in the face. But to me, my first marriage is the furthest thing from the failure.
Yeah.
First of all, I love her dearly, and I respect her, and I admire her, and we were kids, and we did what we did, and in a lot of ways, Christine made me who I am
Do
today.
you still talk to her?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
not as regularly as I
Sure.
probably should, but absolutely.
You have no kids with her, right?
No kids.
Yeah.
But we were always good to each other,
Mhm.
and we were always good friends. And I know that she knows me in a way that is completely unique, and vice versa. And we have a great relationship today. And so look, is it a bummer? Of course it's a bummer. I'm not an idiot. But the relationship, look, my mother told me this thing. And she said, she read it somewhere. I don't know where the fuck she read it. Relationships are for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And we don't know which of those three it is until our life plays out. And I'm sure, like you guys, have had many relationships that I thought were for a lifetime and then ended up being for a reason or a season. And in the moment where it becomes clear this relationship is over, it's hugely upsetting. Here come the cops. But another thing it's connected to in my mind, my buddy Kevin Maney, who wrote Play Bigger, he said one of the things he heard that he tries to hold on to is when something happens in our life, good or bad, he tries not to judge it in the moment, because we don't know whether it's good or bad until things play out, even if we feel like it's really bad or really good in the moment. And so let's just see. And so anyway, I guess my point is, even though it wasn't for a lifetime, and that was clearly my intention, there's no bullshit about that. It was for a season, and the season extends, but in a different way. And on one level, sure, it's a giant bummer, but on the other level, it's okay. She's got a great life. She's an amazing woman, and she's, to use John's word, flourishing. And I have a great life, and we move on, and we're still connected, and it's okay.
It ran its course.
Right? Yeah. It ran its course.
So John, like with your wife, I'm just curious, like, how long
has it run its course, John?
No, I don't think I'll go down that path. Because you got married at 27 and you're 35, so you've been married 8 years.
8 years, yeah.
Wow, you guys had kids quick.
Yeah, within the first year. Yeah.
I mean, I did as well, but I was in my 30s, so it made sense.
Yeah.
So how's being a dad changed you? Did I ask that question earlier? I thought maybe I asked that question earlier.
Maybe. I coach Ace's flag football team. That's changed me.
Yeah.
That's been awesome. That's been awesome.
I can't change.
You run fast, and you run long.
Yeah.
And hard and deep.
You run me long time.
I like to move. How's it changed me?
Like, do you see yourself as a different person or just an evolved person, probably?
Definitely different. Yeah. Maybe evolved in some way. Definitely different.
I had this question. I was talking to my mom last night. So my mom and I, totally different people. But what I do respect, we have a totally transparent. Well, I have a totally transparent relationship with my mom. I don't know if it goes both ways, but I said to her last night, like, every choice I make now in my life is a direct reflection of what lessons I want to teach my kids.
Yeah.
Like everything I do, working hard, discipline, love, it's all a reflection of where I want my kids to end up, or at least the journey I want them to start tracking towards. I imagine you're the same way. Again, same with your kids, totally patient. I wouldn't even have the patience you have with your kids.
Yeah.
But I imagine you're the same way in that category, or that capacity.
Yeah, I think they give me this, just another expression of something that gives me a lot of meaning. It just gives me a purpose.
Yeah.
And I attach that meaning to it. I give having kids a deep meaning. But it's, the big thing for me, it's a permanent reflection of who I am.
Yeah.
So they bring me hyper present to everything.
And because how they react in public is a reflection on you as a parent. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's something I think sometimes get lost. Like if a kid's a shit, it's a reflection totally on the parent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that as a dad. I remember one time my son, we were at a Trader Joe's, and he was probably, my oldest was probably 3 or 4, and we were walking down an aisle, and the guy that worked there had to have been 400 pounds, had to have been for sure. And my son just turns to me and goes, "Dad, he's fat." And I was like, "Holy shit! Like you just called the guy fat." But the guy was amazing. So my son was fat's probably the wrong term, but overweight, we'll go with the politically correct term, was correct. But the guy was amazing. He's like, "Yep, your son's right." And I was like, "Thank you for not making that weird for everybody." Like that's all I could think of. Like, thank you for making that weird. But your kids, I don't know. Like for me, a child, to your point, is like a reflection of who you are. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for you to give micro lessons to your kid about what life is about. I didn't have those lessons as a child. You talked about your dad being an amazing guy and like influencing you. I didn't have any of that. Like, I had none of that.
Yeah.
I've been like reading Braille as I go and imagining that this is what it should be like.
So your dad is really missing for you.
Well, he died when I was 20. So physically and metaphorically, yes, both of those.
Does that feel like a void, or just there was nothing that there was ever to be void of?
No, I think both your dads alive still.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine is.
Very alive.
Yeah.
Way alive. I just spent a bunch of time with Bruce. He's very, thank you, Jesus. He's very alive.
So for me, I think is like any, like you have this experience with your dad, you'll have this with your kid, maybe with your dad now. You get to a point where you get to have the friend to friend relationship, right? It's less bullshit like parent child giving advice. Though at least in my house, my mom still does that role of giving advice, which I don't want. I was starting to get to that point with my dad at 20, and I often wonder how my dad would react to what I'm doing now. You know, when I stated earlier about being the kid who was not expected to go to college, was like, I had no intellectual capacity whatsoever. I only didn't. I mean,
Me neither.
But like,
we still don't.
But I mean, it's one of those things where in your head, it's an anchor of like a limiter in some ways. For you, it wasn't a limiter. You've excelled that, and you excelled that by successes. I had no successes. Like, I had zero successes in my life. I mean, athletically, yes, but I was part of a team, so individually, no. And so when you don't have successes,
up till what age, James?
what do you mean, like no
what,
successes?
Yeah.
I often feel now I have no successes.
What
Like,
are you fucking talking about?
Like, what have I achieved? Right? Like, I've achieved a bunch of degrees, but what does that say? Like, have I influenced the world? Have I made a difference? I've impacted my kids and my wife, which should be the most important thing. I recognize that.
Yeah, but more so than that. You don't think you've impacted people with your work?
Maybe. Do I think I am the linchpin to people's choices in life? No.
Yeah, but who the fuck is?
I don't know. Maybe I have unrealistic expectations. Right?
I mean,
I don't know. But I want to go back to this question. I think it's really important. Is that so I think your point is totally valid. Really unrealistic expectations that I have, but I was getting to the age where I was starting to have that relationship with my dad, and so I often had this conversation internally with what would my dad be like, because we all turn to our parents, right? Like, on some level, Chris is like thinking maybe not, maybe so. So you're the anomaly. That's not the normal.
I mean, don't, to quote Archie Bunker, misconstrue what I'm saying. There are, the biggest thing I got from my parents were what I would call character things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is different than my parents is, how do I want to say this? The word that's in my head is drive, but I don't think that's the right word. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
So I was just in Toronto, and I was there on the NetSuite speaking tour, and half my family's still there, including my mom. And it was fuck hot, fuck sweat your balls off, fuck humid, fuck hot. Okay. And my mom lives in an apartment without fucking air conditioning. And so I'm staying with my mom, and I almost slept on the fucking porch. Anyway, long story, way longer. I spent, I think, 2 nights at my mom's, and then I had to move to this hotel downtown so I could do the shit I needed to do and do the speaking gig and blah, blah, blah. So long story longer, my mom ends up crashing the second night with me in the hotel because it's still so fucking hot. I said to her, Mom, I don't know why we didn't think about this last night, but like, come and stay at the hotel with me. So I don't know where she found it, I don't know if it was online or when she came to the hotel or whatever, but there was something that said like, there was some rule that says like, you're not allowed to have overnight guests, right? And so she's afraid she's going to get in trouble. And I said to her, Mom, first of all, I don't know where you saw that or read that. And my guess is that's to keep party animals and hookers out because this is a business hotel. Here's what I know. It's got nothing to do with anybody's mom.
Yeah.
And so no one's going to give a fuck. No one's going to catch you like camping out in my hotel room. It's fine. And matter of fact, Mom, why don't we buy a movie together tonight and like camp out here? So we had anyway, my point is, you know, my mom is so sweet. Let's just plays by the rule. Anyway, so then that morning I left really early. I had a 5 a.m. cab to get to the fucking airport to fly to New York. And so my mom had to like sneak out of the hotel. And as she was sneaking out of the hotel, the gal at the front saw her because I had left a key for my mom. And she says, oh, you know, Mrs. Lochhead, I hope you had a good time and this and that and the other. And so my mom sent me an email saying, wow, not only did I not get caught and thrown out of the hotel, they were really nice to me and called me Mrs. Lochhead and all this stuff on the way out. I'm like, yeah, Mom, you bend the fucking rules. Come on, like live outside the box a little.
I was just thinking, like, you're a poor editor. I was just thinking about your poor editor.
No. Here's the thing about our poor editor. We don't edit Legends and Losers. This is a poor listener.
Yeah, this is like a 3-hour dialogue.
My kids are okay if you're concerned.
They've arrived. Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
I believe.
Let's not overstate that then. Okay.
Yeah. Well, if your life is, excuse me, as far as your wife is concerned, your children are fine.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before we kick out of this wave?
Yeah, no, good question.
I just want to say thank you for the time, energy, and willingness for me to sit down on Legends and Losers. I think that's been a fun time.
Dr. Kelley.
I don't know what we accomplished besides dialogue.
I don't know what we ever accomplished,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, what else is there? You know, it's
Good conversations, good friends.
good conversations, good friends, good whiskey, good beer,
Yeah.
right?
It's good timing because I have to pee really bad, actually.
And the other thing I want to say to you, first of
Yeah.
all, I love your work.
Thank you.
And I think your book is a very exciting and important. I love how you wear your life on your sleeve. How I relate to you is I'm a guy that's had to unpack a lot of Samsonites. And I feel like you're a guy that's unpacking Samsonites. You know, losing your dad has been a big thing. And I get all that. So, you know, the topic of adversity is a powerful topic because there's no person in the world that, even if you had the most privileged life you can have, sooner or later a friend or a parent dies. Sooner or later somebody you love gets cancer. Like shit happens in life, no matter how privileged or advantaged you are, right? There's that famous Helen Keller quote that says, life gets fired at us at point blank range. And so it's really cool that you're like publicly sorting shit out and helping others sort that shit out. And what it reminds me a little of, not to get overly deep, but did you read Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning?
I did not, but it sounds really impressive and I should.
Oh, wow. I would have bet money. What about you, John?
Yeah.
What was that book for you?
Yeah, it's he was a Holocaust survivor, and the meaning I got from that book is that, and this is probably a quote from the book, that everything can be taken away except our freedom to choose the meaning we give to the moment. And it's just it's an incredible documentation of his experience.
Such a true statement, though.
Yeah. So hearing that story is that's incredible.
Well, I was going to say though, to that point, like, isn't that what life is about? Like, life is about you creating your own meaning out of the situations that you're in, right? And so, like, some of us construct our meaning based on our history, and in that construction, it can be a negative slant. Some of us can recreate the meaning based on the trajectory we want to go. And that could be a positive influence on many people. But it's always up to the individual to create what meaning that is and what meaning they want to give other people. You know, at least to me, that's the way I always feel.
Yeah, I think, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would love to know, James, if someone was, if you met someone who's struggling with tremendous adversity, what would be the most important thing you think they could do to find a deeper meaning, better meaning, find a gift, turn it into something positive?
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the core of what sounds important.
Well, I think in any adversity, there's light. Not to sound cheesy, but I think that, you know, whether it was Chris, though you came late in the process of me writing my book, or many other people I interviewed as well, the ability to take what seems to be a shit sandwich and turn it into a gourmet meal is a really important attribute. And though that's a crass statement, I think it's all about the glass is half full, not half empty, and that there's always learnings. The learnings aren't always there instantaneously. The learnings aren't always in that moment. The learnings might be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months later. But I'd always tell someone, have the willingness to inspect the thoughts that you have and take them out on the veranda and beat them with the bat to make sure that those meanings are valid. And some are, some aren't. But as we were just talking about, the idea of constructing meaning is such a construct that we tend to put a veil over and misconstrue the meaning that we have in that moment, not in a negative way, but going back to Bix, right? Like as individuals, we will create the meaning that makes the most sense to us to make us feel better about ourselves. But the point is that sometimes that meaning is not valid that we create. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, and actually this is a very powerful conversation, because on one dimension, sugarcoating what's so is, in my personal experience, is a source of pain. So if what's true is, you know, I'm sitting next to the number one salesperson in a company that had 1 million salespeople over, how old is Cutco?
At that time, it had been around 50 years.
50 years. So 1 million people did what he did over 50 years, and he was number one. That's what's so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we go back to the thing I was joking about, the weather guy, right? What's so is, it's 51 degrees in Santa Cruz this morning, and the forecast calls for a 75 day, and the fog will burn off between 11 and 12 o'clock. That's what's fucking so. Mm-hmm. Everything else is an interpretation. Now, you could argue it's hard to interpret that being number one out of 1 million people over 50 years is anything other than awesome. Mm-hmm. But what's true is that's what happened. Mm-hmm. And so on one level, I think it's important to own what happens. Totally. You know, so if I get back to the Bix discussion, results equal results. They don't equal no results plus an excuse. So having a perfect, like if you get, God forbid, cancer, what there is to understand is you have fucking cancer. And there's no interpretation that says that's awesome, mm-hmm. right? That's just fucking bullshit. Or how I like to say it is, it's whipped cream on bullshit. And when you serve somebody whipped cream on bullshit, they know it's bullshit. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I think it's absolutely valid to say, what's the opportunity for me in this cancer? Or what's the opportunity for me in this car crash? And if I go back to the thing my friend Kevin Maney, and the guy I love who wrote Play Bigger with us, you know, a bad thing happens, a good thing happens. We have that interpretation in the moment. That's an interpretation. It's raining or it's foggy. That's what's going on. But we have an interpretation, good, bad. But we don't really know till over time.
But in that example, that's perfect, right? We know it's good or bad, but it's what you choose to do in that good or bad, how you choose to react. how you choose to move forward.
See, I think people struggle with it for two reasons. One, they're never even conscious to the meaning they're giving to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then even if they became conscious, in that moment where if someone's lucky enough to even ask that question, what's the gift in this adversity, right? If they're lucky to even ask that, people have to remember that there's nobody that's controlling the answer they create in their mind.
Yes.
That's the final opportunity. That's real freedom. That's unconditional freedom when they realize, you know what, something's going wrong. But in that moment, if they say, what is the good? What is the meaning? They are fully responsible, which is like good news and bad news, right? Mm-hmm. But the good news in that is, I think for me, that's what I learned selling knives early on, is things would go wrong and I'd realize really quickly, ultimately I'm a meaning maker. I can give it whatever meaning I want. And if I give it the meaning, this sucks, and I become a victim and I'm just putting responsibility outside of me, then that's going to lead to me giving up. Or if I give it the meaning, hey, this life doesn't get easier, my skills get better. This is here to teach me a lesson. The size of the adversity has a lesson of equal size. And
that's an amazing saying. I love that saying.
Yeah.
Like it's such a powerful saying.
But I was lucky. I had coaches that gave me that vocabulary to answer that question, what's the gift in this?
Well, and one of the things I've learned is, in some ways, we are what we overcome. We seek out struggle. Look, why do we compete as human beings? Why do the vast majority of Americans watch the Super Bowl? Because we like to see people overcome extraordinary things and succeed. And you know, I mentioned Eric Weinmeier a little bit ago, the blind guy who summited Everest and kayaked the Grand Canyons, all 7 summits and all that. We seek out the obstacles we need to actualize ourselves. And then sometimes, whether we fucking like it or not, life shoves an obstacle right up our ass, and then we get tested. And to your point, what I love about what you said is we have a decision. Mm-hmm. And I remember the point in my life, I was a young man, I was in my teens still, where I had to decide who I was going to be. Because adversity can either break us or make us. And if we decide that who I am is fucking bigger than anything comes at me, that's one decision. And if I decide who I am is that life's adversity is going to crush me, then I get crushed. And so whether it's the adversity that life throws us or whether the adversity that we seek, you know, when we had Jeff Denham on Legends and Losers, he got his arm tore off in the Bering Sea on a fucking fishing boat. And he said, and he's got no fucking arm. And he's a Patagonia sponsored extreme surfer and extreme mountain athlete and now entrepreneur, right? And he said, look, I want no sympathy for the fact that I don't have my fucking right arm. I knew what I was doing. I made the decision. So there's the decision to put yourself in a situation with risk and reward. And then there's fuck, I got cancer. But regardless of the source of adversity, a test that we choose or a test that chooses us, what defines us, to your point, I think, you tell me, John, is who we decide to be when that shit shows up.
But see, I think that there's people like us, well, I'll put us all in the same basket, is that we decide to look at adversity as an opportunity, not as a crutch. But many people look at adversity as utilizing the victim mentality, right? Like, woe is me, it happened again. And the only consistency of that to me is that they're the core conduit of the problem, right?
So
it goes back to choice. I think all this goes
back to choice. Yeah. And to what John said about Viktor Frankl. You tell me, I'm curious as to your memory.
Yeah.
What do you remember the 3 sources of meaning he talks about in A Man's Search for Meaning?
I don't remember them. No.
If I remember right, it's and I'm paraphrasing, the appreciation of things or others, whether it's an awesome person or a beautiful butterfly or whatever it is, the achieving of things. And then the third one, and this one I remember for sure, I may have I'm directionally right on the first two, but the third one is what he calls truly unavoidable suffering. And in the book, he rails against psychological bullshit victimization. Oh, woe was me, and isn't it terrible? And everybody hates me. I'm going to eat some worms and all that crap. But like, if somebody you love dies, that's truly unavoidable suffering. And we have to walk through the fire, and that's it. As opposed to the wah bullshit American with no due respect, the fucking Dr. Philization of the goddamn world, right? That's, go fuck yourself. Joe Rogan says a lot of the problems in our society is we're too disconnected from having to get our own fucking food, right? It's like, well, you don't have to worry about housing and you don't have to worry about food. You bitch and moan about a bunch of bullshit, right? So my interpretation is that's not Frankel's definition of suffering. Suffering is like what he calls truly unavoidable suffering, not this psychological crapola Dr. Phil shit.
So I shouldn't probably preface by saying I love to quote Dr. Phil at this point. So I love to, listen, there's one thing about Dr. Phil which I think is really true. And
by the way, I don't mean him so much as the whining, sniveling fucks that go on the show.
So valid. I always say the best predictor of I don't say, Dr. Phil says, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And I think that that's a really powerful statement because for people we know and we encounter, you can see the prediction of how they're going to act in the future based on how they're reacting now, what they're doing now. Like I see, my family have a bunch of fuck ups. So I have no expectations of their future because their past is going to tell me how they're going to react in the future. And until their past in accumulation tells me they're going to act different, I expect to be deceived, lied to, cheated on because they're doing it in the past. And until that past stops being lied, cheating, stealing, then I can predict the future. That's the only philism I have, but it's one that I really believe in. Because it seems really true to me when you think about people you've worked with in life, right? You can see someone who's always late to something, who always has an excuse for why the project isn't done. And after time, you can start predicting that they're not going to do what they say they're going to do anyways. Until they start fulfilling what they're going to do, then you can predict they're going to follow through with the whatever X is. So that's my only philism I have, but I hold true it. Fuck both of you.
Now we fight.
Yeah.
I generally agree with him. Of course.
I know what you're saying, by the way.
No. So there's the the whining, sniveling idiot who goes on the show, right? And he's trying to be a celebutard and all those things. So God bless him. And he can buy and sell me 100 times. So maybe I'm the idiot. But so it's the whining, sniveling idiot on the show that I react to more than him. Yeah. And at some level, to me, it's enough learning and more earning. Like, stop fucking whining and fucking do something
about it. I hate victims.
Right. And this goes back to Frankel, which is these self-inflicted victims can go fuck themselves, right? In Frankel's case, I can't remember if he was a psychiatrist or psychologist, so you'll have to excuse me, but he was in that field, right? And he was a Jew that was brought into a concentration camp and they performed fucking experiments on him. Jeez. And he got to a place where he says, they can do whatever they want to my body, but they can't touch me. So there's a difference between that kind of suffering and, the whining, sniveling, self-absorbed Kardashian douchebag on fucking Dr. Phil. you know, that's really my reaction.
So I add something to this. The work I do every day is often people will call it culture. And the most interesting thing is when people ask us, hey, what's the fastest thing to rip a culture down? The thing we see again and again is the biggest thing is shared victimization. When you have a collective victimization, that's the hardest thing to work against in a culture. So we see it in groups of people where you have 50 people walk in a room. If 30 of them are operating as victims, that's a big uphill battle. So you got to change how they're talking about, change how they're giving meaning to what's going on.
Yeah, and the thing, and this is such an interesting line, and I think it's a thing that's going on in our society right now, which is, on one hand, when there's areas in our world, you know, so if you think about equal opportunity and equal justice for all, right? And those are things that the United States is founded on. And so when there are things that are not, there's not a level playing field, that's bullshit. And I would never use the word victim, because the minute I identify myself as a victim, to me, I'm disempowered. And so I choose whatever I have. And so, look, I got my litany of shit, physical, mental. We all get the hand that we get dealt. I don't even care about my own shit. I care about my results and the quality of my life, because I say that I'm responsible for all of it. And if I'm responsible for all of it, I can be intentional about designing my life. Now, that said, look, of course there are things that are wrong in our society. Of course, things are not fair, and the system's not fair, and that's fucking bullshit, right? You and I can't make money on Wall Street the way the super elite on Wall Street can make money on Wall Street. It's just fucking rigged. There's no way around that, right? That's wrong.
Yeah.
And racism is wrong, and all of the intersectionality.
In Dubai.
Yeah, those Dubai bastards are intersectional, anti-intersectional. And so there's a level of a playing field that needs it. And so it's interesting. On one hand, there's things that need to be changed.
Yeah.
And you could argue the system disadvantages certain people, and that's racism, and that's whatever ism you want to talk about. But at the same time, look, we had Judge Filer on the show, you know. And my interpretation of him and his father and his family and his cousin Wendell and all of them is, when you feel like you're getting fucked, then do what's right, stand for what's right, play the long game, and shit's gonna work. So I don't like being fucked, but I'm not going to be your victim.
Yeah. Which I think is another way of saying, I think what we're both saying is, at the end of the day, you recognize that whatever someone's going to do, you've got to choose what meaning you're going to give. You've got to make that choice.
Can I add to that? Sorry, I just urinated, so I feel better about myself. Okay.
I was going to go pee too.
Okay, so
We're taking turns.
Is that I feel like it goes back to the key word we've been talking about over and over again.
Uh-huh.
And I got to come. This is probably the longest podcast I've ever been on. It's like a ball of string, wins it in. Is that it's about choice, right? So I could punch you in the face. You can choose how to react.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's.
I'd like to think I can choose how to react.
But you could choose to be like, all right, you're an asshole, and walk away. You could choose to punch back.
Yeah.
You could choose to try to engage in a dialogue. Like, you have a choice.
I would argue, though, that the way most people walk around, they don't have a choice. I think that's the challenge.
What do you mean they don't have a choice?
They don't realize they have a choice.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's the word. Realize. Because we all have a choice.
Yeah.
But we don't know that we have a choice.
Yeah. They don't know that they do have a choice, and they don't know what those choices are. They haven't been given an example. They've never been educated on what does it mean to make another choice, right? Like if my whole life told me that when you punch me in the face, I should punch you back.
No, you're right. I never thought about
that's my only choice.
That
based on where I came from.
That's a really, really interesting perspective. I never thought about it like that. Like I always thought about like, so like I used to have the reaction. My wife will totally agree with this if she's listening, but she's not, so don't worry about it. But like that like
not yet.
No, she won't listen to this. She doesn't have time. She has 4 kids. Is that like, you know? So I was raised in this, as I said earlier, like the Scottish Irish Catholic family where I always joke that, you know, it was an Irish Catholic family with a touch of violence and no Catholicism. Like that's the way I was raised.
Yeah.
And discipline was always physical. Discipline was always emotionally abusive. And for the longest time, probably until recently, I didn't realize I had a choice how to react to those things. I just reacted to those things.
Yeah.
And that's the point you're making, is that human nature is to respond and be conditioned to respond in a certain way that you've always responded to again and again. Yeah. So I think your terminology is absolutely perfect. I love it.
I think that's part of the good news when you look at the whole.
Yes, again, this guy's so smart.
Right? What do you think? He's here by accident because he's a moron?
I was just going to say that's the good news, that everyone's getting into mindfulness and meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Talk about mindfulness.
I just had to wait till he got back for that.
Did we talk about masterminding mindfully?
You know, you talk about education. We have some shared friends in GoBundance. And James, you'd really love me.
What is that?
It's a group of men who come together to
come together right now.
I don't feel like that's it.
No.
Go ahead, John.
They do that too. They do that too.
Me.
Yeah, it's a mastermind group. A lot of these guys have done well as entrepreneurs. They mastermind together in beautiful places.
I don't got to go nowhere.
Yeah, that was my adult reaction. No, I've got to drive.
That was a very dad-like voice.
I'm just thinking about the 3 hours in the car I got.
Oh,
next.
man.
Oh, fuck.
I only thought of that. There's one fellow, Len. Have you met Len? I bet you met him. He was in the audience when you spoke. But his kids are, I don't know their ages. I think they're mid-early teens. Mm-hmm. They all left their public school system because he was inspired to teach them through life. And they're thriving. They're thriving. I can't remember why I thought of that, but
it's a commitment though by dad, right? Like,
yeah. Well, that reminds me of you moving your family to align with your values, right? It's making what some people would look at it as brave or bold, but you or Len might look at that as that was what we needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, I could never actually educate my kids like that. Like I need some sort of structure for them.
Yeah.
As selfless as having kids is, I'm still a bit selfish about what I'm trying to accomplish in my life. And we mentioned earlier that, you know, everything that I do in my life now is either a constant improvement on who I want to be so that they can see that you can improve, or it's about demonstrating to them that choices and hard work and respect and compassion go a long way in the world. I didn't have that as a model growing up, so I struggle through it sometimes, but I realize the value in the long term in terms of what that can do for your kids. You know, my wife, I always joke about this. My wife grew up family of 5. Well, family of 7. She's one of 5. And she has 4 brothers and herself. 3 of them went to Notre Dame. 1 went to the Naval Academy. 1 went to the Air Force Academy. Clearly not a stupid family whatsoever. Like really a bright family. And what's amazing, pilot, so TWA, whatever, American, the mom was a stay-at-home mom. What is amazing to me is that the amount of confidence her mom gave every single one of those kids in terms of success, whatever they define success as, in terms of being good people, is nothing that I got. And man, I can't tell you how lucky I am I married someone like that, because I know that my kids will get the same thing. And there's nothing greater than life. I mean, every single one of our siblings are thriving. You know, 1 is an Exxon executive. 1 is in charge of not an Air Force base, but a Air National Guard base in Alaska. 1 is an actual writer who used to work at Pixar. One is another illustrator who has, globally published books. Like they all are super successful. And it only happens because for them, the amount of confidence the mom gave them, which I would love to soak up. Her mom's a bit of a nut job now, but as kids, she did an amazing job with everybody, and that's amazing that I married someone who's able to do that, because I couldn't do that on my own.
Yeah.
Right? Like I couldn't do it. I'm the pessimist.
Yeah.
Or the realist. I say realist. I feel like realist is a better term than pessimist.
And my wife, Mara, her mom passed away when Mara was, I think, 19 or 20 maybe.
Oh, so same as my dad, essentially.
Yeah. Same experience. And so I've always feel like I'm getting to know her mom through who she is. And then I hear her mom's friends say that our daughter, Sierra, is just like Mara's mom was, which is a fascinating way to get.
Is it weird to hear that?
I love it, because I feel like I get to know somebody important to me that I never met. In a very real way too. Sometimes we're around people, we don't get to know them in a real way. Here, through her granddaughter, I get to know my wife's mom, which is cool.
Can I ask what a real way means?
Yeah, well, it's just to me, I feel like when I say that, the word real, I'm talking about how purely I believe my daughter is reflecting exactly who her grandmother was. Yeah, versus we can spend time around people, we can, and not actually ever get to know who they are at their core, what's going on inside.
In my book, I talk about this section about public self, private self, right?
Yeah.
And often in life, we want to provide this facade, but that's not a word.
Facade.
Is it? I think. What's the word I'm trying to say?
I think a facade is when you have a facade of a vasectomy. So if you have a facade of a vasectomy, you have a facade.
Which is a great way to get laid.
Facade. Thank you.
Facade.
Vasectomy.
Or you could have a facade.
Wayward whiskey, you!
I knew a guy who was on his way to get a vasectomy. At the time, he had 2 kids.
Yeah.
He got pulled over for a speeding ticket. That was like 6 years ago, and he now has 4 kids.
Yeah. So let me tell you, this is.
Sometimes the police can really fuck us up.
This is a true story. So
Actually, it's not the police's fault. It's our speeding's fault. But whatever.
So I have a vasectomy. I got a vasectomy, right? This is a true story. So I'm on the table. So 2 parts. This is hilarious. One, they tell you to pull down your drawers, right? And they pin your penis up to your shirt, get it out of the way, right? And this woman shaves me. The woman who shaves me, right? Beautiful blonde Russian girl, which is always like the capper. So the guy comes in to give me a vasectomy.
Now, did you know it was going to be her before you signed up for this? Okay.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So I sit down to get a vasectomy. And the guy so the guy sits down. And so I go to my podcast mode, right? And I'm like, so what's the craziest story you've ever heard? Right? He's like, well, I've had football players pass out. I've had Army veterans pass out. I said, okay. And then, so we're talking. And as he's talking, he slices me open. Right? And they pull out the vase. And he's like, so how do you feel? I'm like, good. It's like, okay. So I'm going to do this and that. I go, can I see? And I start watching him pull my vase out, snap it in half.
What's your vase?
I don't know how to, it's where the sperm goes.
Google it?
Yeah, just Google that. But it's where the sperm goes, right? It goes through to your testicles, out to your...
Was there sperm shooting out of it when they cut it?
No, it's not a fire hose. It's not a fire hose. We're good. But you could, I saw him pull it with tweezers out of my scrotum, right? So I'm watching this. Like,
there's no part of this I'm enjoying, just so you know. Like, you don't have to go to this level of detail.
Yeah. So this is his point as well. Like, I'm watching this. He goes, I've never had someone watch me do this who's a guy. And I was just like, I'm fascinated to see what's happening.
Wow.
As smoke is rising from my scrotum at the same time, because he's soldering it closed.
Wow.
Yeah. So just for the audience.
Who knew your nuts were a mechano set?
Mechano set.
Well, you just said he was soldering your shit back together, right? Like a mechano set.
I just think
that's wild.
Yeah. So if you ever have a vasectomy, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Watch it.
Yeah. We've talked about it, but
hasn't happened.
Yeah. But I hope we're good with 3 kids.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, but we're not doing it yet.
Which means there's a 4th on the horizon.
I don't think so.
No?
Nah, I don't think so.
No. That's what I said after 2.
Yeah,
I
I was great with 1 and then
Yeah.
2 and then 3.
I'm really good with none.
Yeah.
Although the funny thing is, there's so many people who think that if you don't have kids, you hate kids. And I'm a very engaged uncle. And Carrie's a very engaged aunt. Yeah. So it's those 2 things are not necessarily correlated. Although I will tell you, there was we run a fucking inn here in Santa Cruz. And there was a point this summer where we just had just friends after friends after friends with more and more children. And it does get to a point where enough's enough.
So, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Question. How long does this podcast go for?
This podcast goes to infinity and beyond.
Not that I'm not enjoying this
We're
conversation.
actually, what we're doing, you didn't notice when you signed the waiver. This Legends and Losers episode is actually going to break the world record for the longest podcast. And so you need to just keep going.
I am down with that.
See, because, John, what's the longest race you've ever run?
Yeah. Miles or time?
Miles.
332.
At a time? Like in one time?
Over 8 days.
What's your problem?
Yeah. Gas prices were high. Good to be outdoors.
Gas prices are high.
You goddamn bastards in Dubai.
So we did. Yeah. Was like an ultra marathon.
So this is the
this
is the ultra marathon of podcasts, right? This is John. This is your comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm just settling in. Settling in.
I'm wondering what the fuck the title of this episode is going to be. It's like 3 guys drinking ... forever. Whew. I told you it was a wild ride, and it sure was a fun one. If you know somebody who would love this episode with Jon Berghoff and Dr. James Kelley, please share with them right now. And thank you for spending this time with us. And if you are enjoying Legends and Losers, we would love you just a little bit extra if you took the time to write an iTunes review or a review on whatever other platform you experience legendary podcasts. All right. We would like to thank Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build legendary businesses. Check us out at equitydirectory.co. HarperCollins Instant Classic Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Pick up a copy for your entrepreneurial pirate in your life soon. OneLifeFullyLived.org, the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. Check us out at OneLifeFullyLived.org. PursuingResults.com. They produce legendary business podcasts, and they produce this one too. InterviewValet.com, podcast interview marketing. If you want to get your leading thoughts on some leading podcasts, visit InterviewValet.com. Our good friends at NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. Check us out at netsuite.com. The amazing podcast, one that I subscribe to and enjoy very much, Executives After Hours, with our legendary guest today, Dr. James Kelley. The bestseller, No Barriers, A Blind Man's Journey to Kayak the Grand Canyon, by our friend and guest on episode 47, the incomparable, the uncomparable Eric Weinmeier. Our good friends at 800 CEO Read. If you're going to get a copy of Dr. Kelley's book, my book, or any other awesome business book, check out 1-800-CEORead.com. Rapid Media, legendary marketing outcomes that produce material results in Australia, at rapidmedia.com.au. 1185 Design. It is not a mistake that the most incredible companies in Silicon Valley walk through the doors of 1185 Design. Check us out. Vixen 2, coaching incredible leaders to hack the future and produce the material outcomes that matter in their business. And speaking of great podcasts, another one that is a must subscribe, one of my favorites, the Achieve Your Goals podcast with Hal Elrod and sitting in Jon Berghoff. And Tahoe Truckee Homes. If you have a dream to live in Tahoe, even part-time, check out TahoeTruckeeHomes.com. Oddcast.com. We must remind you that this Oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes. All rights do remain disturbed. We would be remiss if we didn't remind you that Legends and Losers is never tested on GMOs, and we have to warn you that this Oddcast is produced in a studio that does contain nuts, and it may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, and completely moronic statements. Support your local marketing PhD. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Thank you, Dandy Candy. We love you. Never turn your back on the ocean. Do something unpredictable. And hey, man, careful. Clearly, there was a beverage here. And an excuse for today's episode is clearly a Leonard Cohen quote that I love that says, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Thank you, Mom and Dad. I love you. And hey, Colin, this Oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today go to Roberto D. Crissy. He's the CEO of cancer drug maker TriSource Pharma. Sorry, Robbie. We just ran out of time for you. All right, that's it, my legendary friends. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.